Sarah Martinez had been invisible for 3 weeks. In the sprawling refugee camp that stretched across the dusty plains of northern Syria, she was just another volunteer in faded scrubs, quietly restocking supplies in the medical tent. The other aid workers knew her as the shy girl who arrived late one evening with no organization badge. No formal credentials, just a worn duffel bag and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of unspoken stories. "She's probably some college dropout trying to find herself," whispered Dr. Peterson, the camp's lead physician, as he watched Sarah methodically organizing bandages. "Sweet kid, but green as grass, barely speaks unless spoken to." Sarah kept her head down, focusing on her tasks. She had learned that anonymity was safety, that blending in meant no one asked questions about her past, about the nightmares that jolted her awake, or about why her hands sometimes trembled when helicopters passed overhead. Here, she could just help people quietly, without the weight of expectations or the ghosts of memories she couldn't shake. The camp housed over 8,000 displaced families, and the medical tent was perpetually overwhelmed. Sarah worked 80 an hour. Days, cleaning wounds, distributing medicine, and comforting children who cried for parents they'd lost. She spoke little, but her gentle touch and patient presence earned the trust of the refugees, especially the children who would seek her out when their mothers weren't looking. On this particular morning, the camp buzzed with unusual activity. General Morrison, a decorated American military officer, was visiting to assess the humanitarian situation. His convoy of black vehicles kicked up clouds of dust as they approached, and camp officials scrambled to prepare presentations and tours. Sarah watched from the medical tent entrance, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever she saw military uniforms. The general was everything she expected: tall, commanding, with ribbons across his chest and an entourage of subordinates hanging on his every word. As he toured the camp, Sarah retreated deeper into the medical tent, hoping to avoid any interaction. She had reasons to stay away from military officials, reasons that went back to a dusty checkpoint in Afghanistan where everything had gone wrong. The official tour progressed smoothly until they reached the medical facility. General Morrison was mid-sentence, explaining budget allocations to the camp director, when his face suddenly went pale. His words became slurred and he stumbled backward, clutching his chest. Within seconds, he collapsed to the ground, convulsing. Chaos erupted. His security detail shouted into radios while camp officials stood frozen in panic. Dr. Peterson was in the neighboring village, and the nurse practitioner was treating a patient in surgery. The closest hospital was 3 hours away over dangerous. "Rhodes, someone call a medic," screamed the lieutenant, but there was no medic to call. That's when Sarah moved. Later, witnesses would struggle to describe the transformation. One moment she was the quiet volunteer girl cowering in the corner, and the next she was kneeling beside the general with the focused intensity of a seasoned professional. Her hands, which had seemed so uncertain before, moved with practiced precision. "He's having a massive myocardial infarction," she announced calmly, her voice carrying an authority no one had heard before. "I need the emergency kit now. And someone get me that portable defibrillator." The security team hesitated, uncertain whether to trust this unknown girl with their commanding officer's life. But Sarah was already working, checking pulse points and airway clearance with movements so fluid they seemed choreographed. "Move!" she barked when a soldier blocked her access to equipment. "Every second counts within me this severe." She worked with mechanical efficiency, administering medications, establishing in 4-line, and monitoring vital signs while calling out precise medical instructions. Her hands never shook, her voice never wavered. This wasn't the tentative volunteer they knew. This was someone who had done this before, under much worse conditions. As the general's color began to return and his breathing stabilized, Sarah continued her assessment. "We need to evacuate him immediately. His condition is critical but stable. I've administered nitroglycerin and aspirin, but he needs a cath lab within the next 2 hours or we'll lose him." The lieutenant stared at her. "Who are you?" Sarah met his gaze for the first time in weeks. "Sergeant Sarah Martinez, 6'8" Combat Medic, 3rd Infantry Division, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held depths of pain. That made the soldiers step back. The evacuation helicopter arrived within an hour. As paramedics took over the general's care, one of them looked at Sarah's field treatment with professional respect. "Textbook intervention," he told her. "You saved his life." As the helicopter disappeared into the sky, the camp fell silent. Everyone stared at Sarah, seeing her clearly for the first time. The camp director approached hesitantly. "Why didn't you tell us? We could have used your skills, your experience." Sarah's shoulders sagged as the adrenaline faded. "Because I was medically discharged for PTSD after my convoy was attacked. Because I failed to save my squad leader when it mattered most. Because I came here hoping to find some way to help people without the weight of being responsible for life and death decisions." Her voice cracked. "I just wanted to be invisible." Dr. Peterson, who had rushed back upon hearing the news, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sarah, what you did today, that wasn't failure. That was exactly what you were trained for, what you're meant to do." Over the following days, word of the incident spread throughout the camp. The refugees who had always sensed something special about the quiet girl now understood why her touch had felt so healing, why children instinctively trusted her. The medical team formally asked her to join them as a senior medic, not despite her PTSD, but acknowledging that her experience and trauma had shaped her into someone uniquely capable of helping others. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived via military courier. General Morrison, recovering successfully after emergency surgery, had written personally to thank her. But more importantly, he had included documentation for a medical review board, recommending her for reinstatement and commendation. He wrote that her quick thinking and expert care had not only saved his life, but had reminded him why combat medics were among the most valuable soldiers in any army. Sarah stood in the medical tent, letter in hand, watching as Dr. Peterson taught a young refugee how to clean a wound. She realized that invisibility had been her shield, but perhaps it was time to be seen again. Not as the soldier who couldn't save her squad leader, but as the medic who had never stopped saving lives, even when she couldn't save herself from the memories. Sometimes redemption doesn't come from forgetting the past, but from discovering that your greatest wounds can become your greatest strengths. In a dusty refugee camp, a girl who had tried to disappear learned that some lights are too bright to hide forever.